Good morning. We may be, let me back up. I may be a bit discombobulated. This week, the Rocky Mountain Conference of the United Church of Christ met at La Forêt, and I got back about 4 o'clock yesterday afternoon, so we'll have more to say in a little bit about that. But I want to welcome you to Washington Park United Church of Christ. I want to welcome those of you who are online. Thank you for joining with us today. We will have an abbreviated worship time, and then we will go into our annual meeting and do the things that we need to do there. So let's pause and pray. And as you're breathing, let me share with you some prayer concerns. Laura Whitlock was hit in the eye this week and is losing eyesight in the eye and has been through 2 surgeries and is recovering at home. And Lori and Laura would appreciate our prayers. It's my understanding that Kathy White Rabbit had surgery earlier this week, and she'll be recovering as well. Beth McCoy is home recovering from back surgery this week. So please continue to hold those folks in our prayers. Let's pray and breathe. Thank you, God, for the grace and the beauty of the day. Thank you for your presence with us. Thank you for the love that binds us together as Washington Park United Church of Christ. Thank you for the legacy that we continue to live out of loving all creation, loving all persons, because of who they are, because they are beloved children of God, because they are all created in the image of the divine. We pray that today the words of our mouths and the meditations of our hearts will be sources of encouragement, celebration, and hope for the future. For it's in your name we pray. Amen. And now, if you'll stand, if you're able, and join in singing our opening hymn, In the Midst of New Dimensions. seated. One of the items of business at the Rocky Mountain Conference annual meeting was deciding to react to a declaration by some who are a part of the Colorado Republican Party. An email was circulated recently calling for the burning of pride flags and promoting anti-trans rhetoric and falsely naming LGBTQ2SIA plus people as groomers and pedophiles. Many gathered at La Forêt and online for the Rocky Mountain Conference annual celebration this week were disturbed deeply by the email and have prepared a statement in response, which you'll find online, and we'll encourage you to go there and join with me and others in signing the statement. The statement reads, "We, members of the Rocky Mountain Conference of the United Church of Christ, including churches in Colorado, Wyoming, and Utah, decry the virulent and hateful rhetoric of the Republican Party of Colorado, its leadership in its call to burn pride flags, and its proclamation that God hates pride. We denounce this call to violence and dehumanization, which is incompatible with God's expansive love. The United Church of Christ affirms that all people, regardless of sexuality, gender, family structure, age, ability, race, ethnicity, political identity, or any other identity, are created in the image of God and worthy of respect and dignity. We celebrate love and identity in all its many forms. God marches with us in pride. God journeys with all of us as we seek to live lives of justice and inclusion." I didn't write it, but Allison had a hand in it. It sounds like, right? Yeah. Folks, just very briefly, look, the first century Jesus was being hounded by the politics of his day. The leaders, political and religious, were always watching him. And he went into a synagogue for worship, and a man with a withered hand was brought in. And the leaders of Jesus' day were just waiting to see what he would do, because according to their views, to heal on the Sabbath would break the Sabbath. What do you think Jesus did? Healed him. Of course. 21st century lesson from first century Jesus. Love people. Show compassion. Help the hurting, feed the hungry, house the homeless. Care for one another, help one another get the mental health support they need. All of these kinds of things are consistent with the first century Jesus, and they are so needed in the 21st century. Thanks be to God for loving us and creating all of us in God's image. There is ways that you can go online and add your name to the statement, I would encourage you to do so. You don't have to do it now, though. If you get bored with the meeting and you have a good cell phone and you know how to access QR codes, then, maybe you do that. And at this time, we'll move into the annual meeting. Tom? To those of you online, don't hesitate to speak up if you have something to say or to share with us today. As soon as I get out of here.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming to our 2024 annual meeting. And somebody asked me, why do we have our annual meeting in the middle of the year? And I don't know. So any historians can give us a hint on that. But this is our annual meeting. And okay.
Now that you're done.
No, I'm done. It's not uncommon to have an annual meeting at the end of June. It's not uncommon to have a fiscal year end in June. It's pretty normal.
So somewhat like a school year calendar or business, yeah. Thank you, Glenn. Over the past 12 months, you can think about that if you can remember to last annual meeting. A lot has gone on during that time, and most of us have been involved in one way or another in work, being together in groups, doing some really important work for our church community here. And I want to thank you all for that and ask you to give yourselves an applause. Okay, thank you. You don't applaud yourselves very heavily there, but that's fine. So what we've handed out, and we'll pass them around because we didn't want to make 40 copies, but we have the minutes from last year's annual meeting. And part of our process is to make sure we approve them. So as you're looking through those, please let us know if... Okay. Yes, Peter's bringing it to you.
I know that I was there in January, and because of the uncertainty about the future, we voted to approve the budget until this meeting. But that's not what it says in the minutes. It says that we voted to approve the budget. It says the 2023 budget as presented. It does not include a comment that we only agreed to approve it until this meeting. So
Okay,
that's an error.
Yes, thank you. We will correct that error in the minutes, and our agenda today is to pass a 6-month budget for the rest of the year.
So we can't approve it without an amendment that I can correct. So I would vote to approve the minutes as written with an amendment that says that we will change it to reflect the 6-month approval in January. Is that the right way to say it? Close enough. Close enough?
It's good? Kathy? There.
Look at the other side.
Let me ask everybody wait until you have a microphone because the people on Zoom have no idea what's going on.
Kathy, would you like, so there are, it says specifically minutes of, a ministry meeting. But isn't it always our process to approve the minutes from our January meeting at this meeting? That is,
Yes, my mistake.
so we do need different minutes in order to approve them?
Okay, and hang on. And what are you passing out now, Bev? Oh, okay. Too late. All right. This could be a short meeting, but it might not be. So, yes, I thought what we passed out were the minutes from January 2024, because that's what we were asking for. But is that not what people are looking at? Okay. It's not. Okay.
But the minutes say that 10 people voted yes and 3 abstained. That's more than just a committee meeting.
Okay.
So
Okay. So we're going to put a hold on the minutes being approved. Okay. Thanks, Amy.
I don't know.
All right, so we're going to move on then. And you can still read the minutes if you want, but they're not the correct date. To Annie's earlier point, our next topic of discussion, actually we'll do the election slate of officers right now. And then we'll go into the budget, which is probably the biggest thing we need to talk about, or the longest thing, according to Peter, that we'll be talking about this morning.
Definitely the longest thing.
Yeah. So the slate of officers for the coming year, and unfortunately, our new moderator, Maggie Van Cleef, is not here today in the church, but she said she was going to be online.
I'm online.
So Maggie, do you want to announce the leadership slate?
Sure. I'm sorry I can't be there, but I woke up with a bad sore throat and not feeling well, so I decided to keep that in my own home. For the administrative team, we have Tom as past moderator, me as moderator, and Bev Rexroth as the vice moderator. Peter will continue as treasurer. Penelope will join us as clerk. And I did ask many people to stay who had been on from their teams from last year, just because we're going through such a big transition. I thought it was not a great time to be switching leads of our various teams. So if you're interested in serving in leadership, your turn will come. But just because we're in such a huge time of transition, having that institutional knowledge for each team, I felt was more important than sharing responsibility. But I do want to mention that we have a lot going on in the next 6 months, and we do need your help on the transition work groups. So with that, I'll just go on to the rest of the leadership roster. We have Dorothy and Beth continuing on the building team. Kathy Oglesby is going to join us as the at-large member. Beloved community will be Allison and Diane. They're continuing. And Robin and Pamela are continuing as church, culture, and community. With Sharon and Judy going to help us with that transition to a new kitchen and lots of food to eat in Food, Fun, and Fellowship. Anyway, Scott won't be going far. He's going to be the co-lead with Laura for messaging and communication. And Pastor Parish Relations is going to be actually quite different. Scott's going to be the lead of that. Kathy Carfrey is continuing. And those two positions are chosen by the congregation. And then the pastor chooses two members of that team. And Lee has chosen Robin Cutright and Bob Murray, and they have agreed. And then for planned giving, John Liptek, Gail Sidwell, and Jim Whitwer will continue on that. Tom joins as the past moderator, and then we have one more to be determined.
Okay, applause for our new and continuing leaders in the church.
Tom?
Well, let's. Okay.
Told otherwise.
Well, to be determined. Yes.
Okay, are you sending it to my
So
Gmail?
Melinda,
We'll
let's take
talk.
that up after the meeting. Yeah. Okay.
And
We
Tom?
will pick it up afterwards.
Tom,
Yes.
I do believe that despite the general pleasure around the room, we do need to vote on the slate of officers.
Okay, thank you. Do I? Okay. All in favor, just raise your hand. Those opposed? Okay. You don't have to clap again, but that's our new slate and continuing slate of officers. Next, we have the budget approval for the next 6 months of this year. Peter? There you go.
Thank you, Tom. I did indeed warn Tom that this will take a little while. Hello, Dan. Hello, Ann. Thank you, Dan. We are in a interesting and very positive financial situation, but it will take a time to walk through it. John Liptak, who has been treasurer 3 times, says that if the treasurer is confused about all the steps, then it is really important to spell it out piece by piece so we can all get to the right place. So, you might remember, and apparently do remember, that 5 months ago we met for the winter meeting of our congregation, and it seems like that was longer ago than 5 months to me, at least. But at that meeting, I was able to report on the 2023 budget, where we had anticipated a major deficit, but instead we ended the year with a surplus. For a variety of reasons, we ended the year more than $23,000 better off than we thought we were going to be. We filled up the deficit and went a bit into a surplus. What a wonderful moment of celebration that was. Then I moved immediately to proposing a budget with a deficit of $44,560. That was not quite so celebratory. I stress that that deficit was indeed a big deal. As a church, we adopted that budget, but with the stipulation that we have a revised budget presented at the mid-year congregational meeting. I remembered that, Annie. And that's what we are doing today. I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do some other things too. Before we get into the numbers, I want you to remember how I led into that 2024 budget presentation. I talked about going into uncharted territory. Alice, can you put up a slide from January? Next one. There we go. And move the box over a little bit. There we go. You might remember this slide, talking about all the uncharted territory we're going into and the changes and uncertainties. And I pointed to that alleged saying about markings put on medieval maps of unexplored lands, "There be dragons here." And I put out some reassurance that there are many unknowns that we're working towards, but we will not sail off the edge of the earth. Thank you, Alice. Indeed, in January, we were facing vast unknown territories. We had voted months before to sell our properties and move, but we didn't know what sort of money we might get from the sale of the properties. We didn't know where we were going to go, or when we would go, or when our tenants in this building would move out and stop paying rent, or what we'd be paying to somebody else in rent or purchasing if we were going that direction. Or we didn't even know if our congregation would really hang together as we ventured into the dragon-filled new spaces. But in January, we took that bold and anxiety-filled step of committing to a big budget deficit as we set sail into those strange new waters. And we did encounter dragons. Alice? Puff the magic dragon was out there waiting for us. For the most part, we have encountered very friendly dragons, especially on the financial front. Thank you, Alice. Make that go away. To recap some bits and pieces of it, the parking lot across the street has been sold for more than any of us could have imagined in January. Over $2 million for that little patch of asphalt. And it's looking realistic to believe that the two parcels under the building here will sell for equally exorbitant amounts. The deals are not done until the papers are signed, but it is quite likely that our overall proceeds from the sale of all the lots will be over $5 million. That's a friendly dragon. A week ago, we voted to wrap up one of our other great uncertainties. In a nearly unanimous vote, we set our sights on the Mosaic Community Campus and the bookstore at Founders Hall. We are not sailing into unknown seas or uncertain destinations at this point. We have found that some of our current tenants in this building want to stay here as long as they possibly can, simply so that they can pay us more rent. Well, there might be some other reasons behind it too. So we might be collecting more rental income than we imagined last January. And our congregation seems, based on recent community conversations and our recent votes, we seem to be hanging together in this exciting voyage. We are not reenacting the mutiny on the Bounty. Rest assuredly. There be dragons, aye, they're friendly dragons, and we have found helpful directions and guideposts in navigating our voyage of discovery. Well, that was a poetic little telling, wasn't it? But it is grounded in reality. I don't have all of the financial figures for our May reports because we usually don't by this point in the month. And like Lee, I was down at La Forêt for the last 4 days. But overall this year, our income has been doing quite well, and our expenses have been in line with what we've projected. We've dropped slightly into the deficit realm, but only slightly. I'm not going to pass out spreadsheets with all of those reports, but I want to be reassuring that our basic lines of income and expenses are doing okay. This isn't a basic year, though. Dragon language aside, we are looking at realities and options that we are not used to. On my way to outlining a revised 2024 budget, I want to give some quick information, and I will try and be quick, and propose a total of 3 congregational votes, because we have to do some things in sequence. We will be talking on a big picture level because in this new financial realm, $500 up or down doesn't make a whole bunch of difference. The proposed mid-year budget, which was recommended by Administry, makes a few tweaks to a few line items that were in the January budget we voted on, but none of them are startling. What has changed, as I outlined a few minutes ago, is that we have started to get proceeds from the sale of our church properties. The parking lot was $2 million, and we are able to keep using the parking lot until the end of the year because we are paying the whopping rent of $100 for the whole year. We can afford that. Those millions of dollars that we have already received have been conservatively invested at the recommendation of the Endowment Committee and is approved with the full support of Administry. They are invested through United Church Funds, a United Church of Christ agency, which has previously and continues to handle our endowment fund and parsonage fund, and has done that very well for several years. Last Wednesday, I reached out to Matt Wagner, our primary contact at UC Funds, with a question. I had looked at the statements on our new transition fund. That's the pot of money where the proceeds of sales are coming in and is kept clearly separate from everything else. I looked at the transition fund statements, and I did not see any income coming in from the $2 million we have sitting there. This created some anxiety for me. So I sent an email to Matt, and he replied quickly, with reassurance, and without calling me an idiot. He led with a short statement. Dividend income is earned quarterly. So, no, Peter, in 1 month, you're not going to see anything coming in. I was greatly relieved. Matt went on from there, having looked back at the records of our account and looking at the date of our 2 deposits. $250,000 on March 18th, that's the earnest money that we're holding for this land, and the $2.146 million that was deposited at the end of April. That big deposit was made only about 6 weeks ago. Matt made a prediction, speaking as a financial person, assuming the rates stay where they are today, and he wrote, I estimate that the total income received in this quarter on that account paid on June 30th, 24, will be around $31,000. From less than 3 months on investment, on essentially just the money from the sale of the parking lot, we will receive $31,000. We get 2 more quarters this year of the parking lot money, and in the 4th quarter, we will add in a huge chunk more from the sale of the rest of these properties. We will have more than double the amount that we've already invested. A wild guess from a person who is not a financial expert, in 2024, we could be looking at a grand total of at least $100,000 in investment income based on the sale of our church properties. We are going to be okay. But that's too simple, of course. A lot of money has come in, but some big chunks will go out. There will be relocation and moving expenses. Bev will let you know that we need to buy about 70 new chairs because these pews simply will not fit well in the space that we're going to, and besides that, they are falling apart. There are remodeling expenses, especially for a kitchenette, or maybe refinishing the floor, or other things that we don't fully know yet. We will need to hire movers to move the good stuff from here to there, and to move the not so good stuff from here to someplace where it can be used. We may need a new piano of some kind. Our piano tuner has told us that this one, if it is moved across the city, will never stay in tune again. That stress is just going to ruin the soundboard. None of this is shocking news. For months now, we've been having conversations based on a flowchart, Alice, that I roughed out after a committee meeting last fall. Most of you have seen it. If you look at the top, it says we received the proceeds of sale last fall, a guesstimate of $4 million. We guessed low. Below that, it says use some for expenses of relocation. Then there is a one-time decision on a split between mission and the congregation. Green for the mission work, orange for the congregation, and then further decisions below that. Right now, we are halfway through the top line of receiving the money. We have a lot of work to do as a congregation on this. And if you look at the newsprint and stickums stuck over in the corner, it is this section about how we divide the money that is getting the most comments and the most variety in comments. We have a lot of work to do on this. Thank you, Alice. So finally, we're getting there, Tom. Here is what I am proposing as the Wash Park treasurer. There will be 3 motions. First, we will authorize administration to use money from the sale of the various properties off the top to pay for the direct expenses of relocating our congregation. That relocation funding can come either by drawing on the principal of the sale or the investment income or some mix of the two, because it's all bookkeeping anyway. The second motion is to clarify something for this year only. For the remainder of 2024, and only for that time, we will approve, listen carefully here, we will approve the use of a portion of the investment income that we receive from the property sale so that we can cover the deficits in this year's budget. That is just a portion of the investment income. We can't use it all, and we cannot touch the principal for dealing with our ongoing budget needs. And the motion has some conditions about next year. And then finally, with those 2 things in place, I will ask you to approve the outlines of a revised budget, and I'll give some real live numbers there. Deep breath. Any questions about what I've roughed out so far? Thank you. Okay, let's deal with the first 2 motions. I move that, Alice, next slide. I move that Washington Park UCC authorizes administration to use money from the sale of the church properties in 2024, can't get into the parsonage money, just the 2024 income, for the direct expenses of relocation of our congregation. Administration may allocate funds for this specific purpose from either the principal of the sale, the income on investments for the transition fund, or a mix of the 2. End of motion. This does not come from administration, but it isn't a surprise to administration, or I don't think to most of the rest of us. It does, though, need a second. Emily says, oh, no. Yep. Oh, microphone.
Because we have the motion following this that we're also going to draw from the income from investment, is it feasible to use that income for both places? So the income from investment are in 2 motions. It's in this one and it's in the next one, which is the sorry, forgive me, covering the deficit, thank you. Is there projected to be enough income from investment to have it in both motions, for it to be used in both places?
You will see the specific numbers on the third motion, but
Okay.
I am looking at using maybe half of the investment money from the parking lot for the budget covering, which would leave yet more investment income. And administration can decide what's prudent as we work through
Okay.
that.
Okay,
But yes, there is an overlap of where the investment money might come.
Okay.
And we don't want to spend investment money on relocation and discover that we don't have any to use for the budget needs.
Yes, which
I
is
will
why we
keep a
also have the
close eye on
principal.
that.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that we weren't going to stretch one area of income too thin between two places.
Thank you for paying attention.
You're welcome. Then yes, I will second that motion.
So, Tom, there is a motion and a second on the floor. Do you want to take over any discussion and run the vote?
Want to say
Oh.
something? I don't know, John wanted to say something?
Just to point out,
We haven't gotten to that motion yet. But,
I'm not going to talk about that motion yet.
okay, thank you.
I was just going to say, if you look at his thing, that he is proposing to use 70% from just the parking lot, which leaves the rest. And that's how I believe.
Yep.
So, yes, you're jumping ahead, and that's cool, but he thought of it.
Is there any other discussion or comment or questions?
Any estimate on what the relocation expenses might be?
No, not a clue. It will, I assume, be considerably less than $2 million.
Well, we understand that there's money from the parking lot, money from the other properties. That's a big bucket. But what is what's the size of the reserve account outside of those two right now? I'm just curious.
I did not bring those figures with me. We have a savings account with 40,000 maybe. We have two other investment funds with United Church Funds. The endowment fund, which is fairly tightly restricted, and the parsonage fund that also is not available for general use. And those two total somewhere around 200,000 total in some other funds beyond the checking account. And Bev, the question was, how much relocation expenses are there? You've at least looked at the price of chairs. $10,000 per chair. No.
Are there other questions, comments before we vote?
I'm hoping that we could add in or whatever that. Perhaps. Given that spending from the principal means that we get less future returns, that I would like to encourage something that allows preference to be given to be spending from the income that comes from the principal before we start mucking around with the principal.
I assume the people who have just moved on to administry hear that. I'm not sure we need to put it in the motion. Keep some flexibility for ourselves as things unfold. Is that acceptable if we just hear it well, Carol? Or do you want it formally in the motion?
I guess it doesn't need to be in the motion, but maybe it can be in notes that go to the administry team.
Do we have anyone taking notes?
it is. Penny's taking notes, and you'll include that in the notes? Great.
If there are no other questions or comments, we can vote on the motion that's been made and seconded. So all in,
And to recap, that is about taking off the top of the income the direct expenses for relocation, but only direct relocation expenses.
so let's have, raise your hands if you are a yes on this motion. Okay. And any noes? Okay. Thank you. So we have it recorded.
Thank you. There were several hands up, yes, and I did not see any no votes online. Speak. Thank you. And we don't have little arrows back and forth, so we're seeing all the online people. The second motion recognizes that all of the proceeds, all the properties have not yet been sold, and we have not worked through the full congregational decisions about how to allocate all of the money, whether that's for our own use or for others, and over what time span. So this motion is a limiting authorization. And there it is. I move that for the 2024 budget year, I move that for the 2024 budget year, a portion of the investment income from the transition fund may be used to reduce the deficit in our general operating budget. In 2025, the congregation may vote to continue use of the investment income for the operating budget. Beyond that time, any use of funds from the 2024 sale of properties must be part of a comprehensive congregational decision about the overall allocation and disbursement of funds. And a second is needed for this one, too. Kathy seconds. Tom. Microphone, please.
He's going to call for the vote. Is this questions?
Yeah, this is questions time.
Can you put it back up on the screen? So I think what's not clear from the motion is who is deciding to use a portion of the investment income from the transition fund to reduce the deficit in our general operating budget. So I guess I'd like it to be, if that's what it is, if it's the administrative team, so I'd like it to be explicit. So, and then in 2025, the congregation has to vote. Beyond that,
Yeah. If any of that is going to be used in 25, which I presume it will, that has to be a congregational vote for that year.
how is 2025 different? How is the beyond that different from before that?
Let me restate what I think Peter is trying to say. He wants to use part of the money to deal with our budget deficit this year. He wants to, without potentially having that overarching allocation and plan, the possibility to also use some money in 2025.
If we have not had the big discussion
If
yet.
we've not finished the big discussion yet. And then anything past that has to go through a congregational vote of a plan for how to spend the money. So, correct. So he's
Basically,
there
motion
would be a
3 on the revised budget is the vote that we will use a certain amount of the investment money.
So what he's saying is that when we do our budget for 2025, we don't also have to take a second vote to be able to use some of the income from the sale. And what he's saying is that anytime after 2025, that needs to be part of the comprehensive plan. So he's giving the sequence here, saying, let's not tie ourselves into having that comprehensive plan by January of 2025 when we have to vote on next year's budget. So we get to use some money this year. We can, if we want to as a congregation, vote to use some money for the 2025 budget. But beyond that, we need to have a plan.
Thank you, John, is that correct, Peter?
That's correct.
Thank you, John, for articulating that.
Anyone else before we vote? Okay, so we have a second on the motion, and let us vote. All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay, passes. The motion passes.
Thank you all. We have now laid the foundation that we needed for considering the actual revised budget for the balance of this year, 6.5 months. I'm just going to look at the big budget categories and not line by line by line by line, because only a few of those have changed from what we voted on in January, and none of them are a really big change. And remember that this budget does not include the relocation expenses. That's just not standard operating stuff. You should have received a one-page handout that has this, which is going to be easier to see than what's on the screen. But Alice, if you want to pop up the income side. The top line on contributions, we're holding the same assumptions that we had in January. Building rental expectation is that we get a bit more because we're staying in the building longer than we thought we might in January. Grocery card income, which dribbles in periodically, is staying the same. And then there is this new listing that says, let's use $50,000. The total, 70% of the parking lot. For the year, 2024 income of $213,000. Of money that we never. There we go. As they said down at La Forêt, put it on your chin, and then you know that it's going to pick up right. So let's go on to the expenses slide. Building expenses now pick up some expenses for what we will have at Mosaic. We will have rent to pay there. This assumes, I think, 3 months rent at $4,500 a month, which is sort of in the right range. That's all being negotiated still. We will also have to pick up some new renter's insurance for our responsibilities in that place. But it's not a huge change in the building expenses. And I will point out that in the January budget on building expenses, I think we budgeted $300 for repairs for the year because we don't need to fix a building that's going away. Administrative expenses are essentially the same as proposed last January. Wage expenses are exactly the same as we proposed in January. And program expenses have gone up a bit. Two things in particular on that. We are adding some money to help support the Women's Retreat annual program that is a beloved part of this congregation and our extended community. And we are providing some camp scholarships to La Forêt that we haven't done for many years. for kids who really want to go to camp. So our total expenses are projected to go up by $13,000 to a total of $215,000. And the third line, or the third slide, there it is, picking up the two lines that we've already looked at, except the expense line lost the commas somehow. And we run the math on that. In January, we predicted a deficit of $44,559.15. The revised budget projects a deficit of $1,144.15. I could have juggled figures and made it a balanced budget, but let's worry about a deficit a little bit and hold down expenses and try and raise some more money. Any questions on the revised budget? Any? Microphone, please.
I appreciated you offering the $4,500 estimate for our future rent. And previously, I had heard an estimated number of $6,000, so $1,500 more. I am wondering where this new number is coming from, and I don't know if Maggie can address that, or whether or if this is just coming out of nowhere.
Maggie is unmuted.
I guess I'm really wanting to know what the rent's going to be, or as close as we can guess.
We just began negotiations. We're going to have our first face-to-face meeting, so we don't have a lot of information. We've always been expecting between $4,000 and $5,000, so I think that's Peter split that down the middle, and that's what his estimate has been. We also don't know when we're going to start paying rent. So it's all educated guesses at this point, and I'm sorry I don't know more, but we are in active discussions with Archway on the lease terms, which is really great news. And I think Peter's numbers are good guesstimates.
They are guesstimates. We have not reached the state in negotiations with Archway that we can come up with a solid figure on that, but it is the ballpark that has been in conversation on both sides for a number of months now.
Any other questions before we vote? Dan?
Hi, just a very quick one. Sometimes with rent, there are leasehold improvement options, and I don't know with churches, but in office space, oftentimes the renter will get significant amounts of leasehold improvement at the beginning, so that we would have that to spend. Is that at all a possibility?
Maggie, can you speak to that?
We haven't gotten to that level of detail. My expectation is that we will probably pay for all our own leasehold improvements. We may try and negotiate for them to refinish the floor, because I think that would have to happen no matter what they do with that space. But as I said, we haven't really gotten to that level of detail yet. But I think everything's on the table, so we can certainly ask for some cost of the kitchenette.
Any other questions? Administry did approve a revised budget at a meeting several weeks ago. As I was sitting down this week to get the summary put in place, I found I had made some spreadsheet errors in what I gave to Administry. And so what I have put here says we should use a little bit less of the endowment money than I had thought. But since it is a change from what Administry specifically approved, I'll just make it a motion myself and ask for a second. Thank you. And Tom, back to you.
So please raise your hand if you are in favor, a yes for the motion. And those who are opposed? Okay, The motion passes.
My work here is done.
We now come to a time of sharing what's gone on in terms of births and christenings and memorial services as well. On June 17 of last year, we shared in the christening of Ellison and Hazel Hyde, Maggie and Mark's grandchildren. Thank you, Maggie. The Early Learning Center held a memorial service for infant twins who passed away, twins of Beth and Ben Ertz. We had, on January of this year, baby showers for Ricky Jude Allister, there's Ricky, and for Elizabeth Leanne Haxby. Of course, at the time of the baby showers, we didn't know their names, so that's wonderful to welcome them. And then on April 13, we had the memorial service for Becca Handel. And have I missed any grandchildren that have been born in the last year? Guy?
January 9th, Brittany had a new third baby, Brian.
All right. Another grandchild, Brian, born to Brittany. Congratulations. Any other folks that I've missed? Laura.
Scott and Pamela had a granddaughter, Michael. Emma Scarlett.
Okay.
In October.
October, okay.
Yeah.
Welcome, Emma. I apologize for forgetting that. We had great pictures from Scott and Pamela when they were there. Anyone else? If not, that would be my report, Tom. Well, let me just say welcome new members. Dan, Ann, Barb, Kimberly online. Who else have I missed? Penny. And Jim. Yay. Welcome new members.
We are nearing the end, so you don't. We're nearing the end. Now we have committee reports. And Allison.
Beloved community report. Diane Peterson and I are the co-chairs, and basically everyone in the church is a member of this committee because you all are doing stuff all the time in your life and your work and your volunteer stuff. So you all are part of the Beloved Community Committee, and you'll be glad to know that we really don't have any meetings. We just do stuff. And Diane and I coordinate information and urge people on. And we'll perhaps do some programming as we get more settled. But what we've done, what you all have done this past year, you've raised over $11,000 for temporary protected status applications for Venezuelan migrants. You've started the process of supporting folks in circles of care for migrant families in our community. You've done a Strengthen the Church offering recently. You've sent postcards to the Environmental Protection Agency about setting tougher pollution standards through the National UCC. You've marched in Pride Fest and the MLK Parade last year when it was so cold. And you continue to, you did a coat drive, and you continue to provide food for fish and for Women's Homeless Initiative, And since COVID started, so like 4 years ago, you all have made up to 100,000 brown bags for the Women's Homeless Initiative. Well done.
Thank you, Allison, and everyone who participated in the support of our greater community. Another report comes from Dorothy and Beth, who were not able to be here this morning, and it's a brief report. Building Committee Move Logistics Group has been busy inventorying each room. After a thorough inventory, we have organized, sorted, and found new homes for items we either can't take with us or won't need in the future. We choose to start fresh with some furniture and will replace some items. Articles in Contact have detailed our actions by month. As Wash Park UCC's lease is negotiated with Mosaic, many questions we have been waiting on will be answered. Now we can start planning for our new home. Are there any other committee reports?
Hi, Robin Cutright for the C3 committee. First, I want to thank Sharon Larson and Judy Murray for all the help and work that they've done. I appreciate it. This year we've done a handful of ladies' luncheons, one which Tom already mentioned, or I don't remember. Anyway, which included the shower for Alice and Emily. And we also have had the women's retreat in Estes Park and church in the park. So thank you for the support, and we really enjoy all the things that we've done. Thanks.
And are there any other committee reports? Okay. This brings us close to the end of our annual meeting. And as we talked in leadership about what has happened over this past year, we thought there were a lot of people, if not everyone, somehow involved in actions that have really supported the efforts of the church, especially around transitioning. So the flowers on the floor are there. Please take one or two with you as a gift from the congregation to the congregation individual members. And thanks for all the really great work that has been done, the service, the reaching out, the listening to one another. Appreciate that. In terms of an announcement, just want to remind you that these bags up here on the tables that have been being filled over the last few weeks are ready to be taken today. So if you would, please take the bag with your name on it, and if there's a bag that belongs to somebody that you know or a family member, please take that as well. We just want to make sure we get all those bags out today. And I would say that concludes our, okay. Yeah, you can use.
So I think I'm just being old-fashioned here, but I would still like to say that we should be offered the minutes from the January semi-annual meeting.
And we will.
And that those should be shared via contact. Can we be explicit about how they will be shared?
We will have them in Contact or in the weekly communication that we send out.
Also,
And
just
if you look back in your old contacts, you will find them. You'll find those minutes for February of this year.
Also, I know that this is a formal meeting with a formal structure, and it does require a motion to adjourn, because that allows people who have any new business they would like to bring up before adjournment to bring it up. Not that I expect it, but I guess I'm appreciating those formalities. And I'm really grateful for Penny
And
being
so,
the clerk.
Does anybody have any new business they'd like to offer? Okay.
So we do need a motion for adjournment. I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, but before we leave, there are a lot of refreshments available in back. And also, we have a song and a blessing that we can share.
And I'll just say that the offering plate is on the table, and yes, we've talked about massive sums of money today. And I think part of our goal is to keep operating as close as we can to what we bring in. So let me thank you for your support over the past year and your continued support for Washington Park UCC. And now our closing hymn. May God bless you and keep you. May God make their face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May God lift up her countenance upon you and give you peace. Peace be with you. And let's pass the peace online. Thank you for hanging in here with us today. We love you, we miss you, and it's good to see you. Take care.